Good morning again.
Good morning.
Thank you for your patience as we make minor adjustments. The attempt here is to increase the flow so that you have a deeper experience on Sunday morning. And we'll get it, but I appreciate everybody who's helping me with that. Our practitioner today is Ann Canet, and let's give her a hand. We have our other licensed practitioners happen to be on holiday, so she's the only one available today. I always say this is a teaching, not a preaching. And as such, it's as much about unlearning as it is about taking in new information. Because that which is true is in us before birth. And the old saying, the mind knows the truth when it hears it. I know you've all had that experience. So there's a quickening, yes? There's a quickening when you hear something that you know is true and you know has something to do with you. And that quickening is an energy that, if allowed to have its way with us, will move through our physical self, move through our brain, our body, our heart, and every aspect of who we are, and lighten us up. Give us new ideas, new ways of being in the world, new expectations, new perceptions. That quickening happens in many different ways. Have you ever read a book that you read more than once because there was something in it? How about a movie you've seen 8 times? There's a couple of them I've seen that many times. A great piece of art, a great piece of music that stirs the soul. There's a quickening in us. What is it about that experience, or what is it about those things, the author, the painter, the musician, that has created that possibility? They have caught the spirit of it. Van Gogh. If you ever get a chance to stand in front of a Van Gogh painting in person, do it. It is life-changing. Because Van Gogh caught the soul of his subject and painted it, which makes him a great, great artist. He caught the spirit of the thing, the light within the tree, the flower, the face, the stars. And you can see those paintings over and over and over again and get the same experience. There is a quickening in us, the recognition of the presence of the Spirit. So the intention, the love, the passion of the artist or the author seems to be in the work and comes out to engage with us when we engage with it, when we enter into the Spirit. And the very same thing can happen with ideas. You know, we talk a lot about ideas in this teaching because the universal principles that we teach are very simple. Consciousness precedes form. Consciousness creates experience. You could use the word awareness. You could use the word belief. You could use the word perception. But there is an experience in intelligence, which each one of us is. We are an experience of intelligence knowing itself as us, that creates after its own kind. Intelligence responds to intelligence, love responds to love, peace responds to peace. So that which is in our spirit is always available for us to express. And we become the author of our life. We become the artist of our own experience, and we become the quickener in the life of other people. So with ideas, they come alive in us when we allow the spirit of the idea to take hold of us, to activate our feelings. So let me ask you this. How often do we really stay with an idea until it takes form and shape? Usually we don't stay with them long enough, right? Because we've got all kinds of things to think about. And so we flit from one idea to another, and yet we wish something were different in our lives. We wish we had something different. And I want to make a real strong point here. The quickening process in the creative process does not happen in the wanting stage. You can want something forever, right? You can want it, you can long for it, and nothing happens. The wanting stage is about as far as an untrained mind can go. You know, Ernest Holmes, the founder of this teaching in modern times, said, trained mind is stronger than an untrained mind. A trained thought is stronger than an untrained thought. And there's a great truth in that. And this is why we have classes in this teaching, to learn how to retrain our thinking mind so that it's in tune with the Spirit. It's in tune with what the greater idea that wants to happen. So the untrained mind will take an idea. It wants it. It longs for it. It feels bereft that it doesn't have it. But it doesn't sit with it long enough for the idea to make itself real inside in our awareness, where we know it's already so. You know, when we say, and so it is, at the end of a treatment, other people say amen. That's what that means. It's done. I have faith in it. I trust it. I know it's true. It's already so. All right, so Ernest Holmes said, ideas, your idea, my idea, are just the tip of the iceberg of an ideal. And my favorite example is the wheel. It was an idea that was out on the outer edge, we might say, of a deep wellspring of possibility known as the principle of locomotion. So just imagine a group of cavemen sitting around in a circle, grunting, scratching themselves. And one of them says, "What's that? Did you see that?" "See what?" "That thing, that big thing that just went all by itself down that hill." "Man, you've been smoking those leaves again? What are you talking about, it moved by itself?" "It did, I saw it." Of course, he saw a boulder rolling down a hill. And he saw something quickened in him. I'm just making this up, of course, but it could have happened this way. And he probably thought, what if we strap those to our feet? Could we roll down the hill? You know, that was the beginning of the discovery of the wheel, right? Locomotion. The wheel led to the rocket ship, to all space exploration, and to all kinds of other things. Did I tell you the story about William McDonough when I was here before, the environmental architect? He's a brilliant guy. Well, we were in a conference once, and someone said, he was talking about locomotion, and someone said, "Do you have hope for humanity?" He said, "Sure, on the one hand, I do, because we're spiritual beings. On the other hand, it took us 5,000 years to put wheels on our luggage." Yeah. We're a little slow sometimes. But you know, that's a political statement, because the reason is only rich aristocrats traveled. And they had indentured servants and slaves and maids and valets to haul their luggage around. They didn't need wheels. It was the rise of the middle class that started moving around that said, "I'm not carrying that. Let's put some wheels on our luggage." And it hasn't been too long since we did it, right? So everything like that is derivative. You know, everything has its cause, and we experience the effects of them. So whatever idea you have, if it's for better living, prosperity, health, it's just the beginning. Let's say we're longing for a relationship of the romantic kind. I know some of you are. I'm not one of them, but I know some of you are. I had my day. No, I'm just kidding. I don't really know how I feel about it. I'm conflicted. Let's say you're longing for a new relationship. So we imagine a person, we imagine a form, we even start describing how old they are and how they look and how tall they are and all that stuff, right? We concretize it. What kind of personality? This is the tendency of the local mind to do this. The local mind will always come up with what it has previously seen or known, or what somebody else has, which causes a lot of problems, right? It's the non-local mind that can find the spirit of the thing, the soul of the thing, the aspect of the thing that has no obstacles in front of it, that comes through us by means of us as we allow it. We allow ourselves to get in harmony with it, in sync with it, and know it is already so. So if we were to sit in silence and enter into the spirit of love, for example, we might find ourselves so alive in its energy that the longing disappears. we might feel love so alive in us that we realize, I have it. And so we no longer ask, how do I find it? We ask, where can I express it? What can I do with this love? And that expression will automatically trigger the law of attraction, the law of generation, I call it. And we will find ourselves with many people in our lives to love and to experience that inner love of ourself with. You see what I mean? You take it to a bigger level, and it will produce after its own kind, and it will surprise us and delight us. All my personal affirmations end with, and I am surprised and delighted at the results of this statement. I no longer tell God what to do. It works through me by means of me according to what I give it to do, and I give it to do things with my mind and my consciousness and my awareness and my perception. So it might not be, it might be a new romantic relationship, but it could be with someone you never thought was your type, right? I have a friend in Canada who found the love of her life, and she said, I'm 6 inches taller than him. I can't believe I'm in love with this guy. And that is a great relationship because she used spiritual principles to allow ourselves to open up to love and was surprised and delighted at what love looked like in her life. So too much outlining, and we leave out the infinite aspect of the thing. Everything has an infinite aspect. Every single thing has an infinite aspect to it. Every idea, it's an ideal. So when we stand before a great work of art, we smile, we may cry, we are moved, inspired, and grateful. And that often happens to people when they come to a place like this for the first time. The mind knows the truth when it hears it. I have been the senior minister of several centers, some of them very big, and every Sunday someone cries. Usually because they've had the quickening experience, like, oh, she's talking about me. I have to admit, I was in this teaching 2 years before I realized they were talking about me. I just thought it was an interesting intellectual pursuit, right? One day I got it. And I had someone do a treatment for me after 2 years, and it, whoa, completely changed the trajectory of my life. I began to see things in a different way. I began to realize principles apply to people, not just locomotion and electricity and electromagnetism and those things. Principles that run the universe apply to people. And each person is a personification of that cause behind the principle. Call it God if you want. God's a hot button word for a lot of people. I prefer spirit because it connotes movement. It connotes action. It connotes energy, right? The spirit is moving through me. As I said at the beginning, I'm changing some of the vernacular here and the verbiage to make it more accessible to more people because it is a teaching that could change the world, and we need to get it out there. Okay, so you're a great work of art. I'm a great work of art, like a sculpture. Sometimes I look in the mirror and I think, this sculpture is eroding, or I think it's melting or something. I'm an ice sculpture that's melting. Do you ever feel like you're... that's my local mind. My non-local mind says, man, you're hot. My spiritual mind says, you're eternal being. It doesn't matter what your body does, you will always be present in some form expressing this heart that you have. That's true of all of us. So, here's the deal. We have to go meet it, the spirit of the idea. We have to enter into it. It's very much depicted in the greatest story ever told by Christians, the prodigal son. And I'm not going to go into the story, it's too long. But the son goes out, squanders his inheritance, makes a mess of his life, turns around to go home, and what he sees is his father coming towards him. And that's what happens. When we go within to meet an idea, a greater idea of love perhaps, it rushes to meet us, so to speak. It's present, awaiting our recognition of it. And that's true of joy and peace. The little song we sang, it means nothing if we haven't felt that quickening of peace and joy, and we haven't expressed it. And instead of saying, how can we create it? It's like, I'm it. What am I going to do with it? What am I going to do with this peace and love and joy I have inside of me? That's the question to ask. How shall I serve? Right? And it begins right here in our own spiritual community. And it builds, and we find ourselves moving out in the world doing things we never thought we could do before because we have that energy quickened in us, that power. It could be said that spiritual mind treatment, well, I'll use the word prayer just for now. I try not to use it too much because, again, whole different connotation from what we do. It could be said that it's in our actions. Now, Ralph Waldo Emerson, who was a tremendous influence on the formation of this teaching by Ernest Holmes, he said, prayer is in the farmer as he kneels to plant his corn. It's in the mother as she labors to birth her baby. It's in us as we begin a new job or a new relationship. We have faith, we have trust, we're all on fire with it. We think it's the greatest thing that ever happened. It's going to be super, right? We start off on that level. And then what often happens, though, is we start looking at what's going on around us rather than what's going on inside of us. And we forget that we are the co-creator of that experience, that great love, that great new position, the peace we feel in the world. We generated it and we're creating it. And we start attributing cause to something else. Well, I felt pretty good before, but that person is making me, I don't feel good anymore. Or my boss, or my coworker, or my partner is stopping me from expressing this beauty, this love, this joy. Never true. It's never true. It's an opportunity. I think we talked about this last week a little bit. It's an opportunity for us to get back to our non-local self that knows the truth and affirm it and say it out loud. So that's why Emerson wrote this. Prayer, he wrote this in his essay on self-reliance, which is a great piece of writing. He said, is the contemplation of the facts of life from the highest point of view. Whoa. Hello. What is the contemplation of you from the highest point of view? What do you contemplate about this teaching from the highest point of view? Or your prosperity? What's the highest point of view? In another part of that essay, he said something about it is the rising of the mind above the experience and seeing through it to the ideal behind it. So instead of fussing and fuming about what we don't have, he advised us, as all the great spiritual teachers have, is to go within and claim that we already have which we seek. That which we seek is alive in us. But we must go meet it halfway, and it will rush to us. The highest point of view actually is what someone would call faith. I call it trust. Trust in the process, trust in the ideal, trust in myself, trust in the unseen power. And the highest point of view is the natural progression of an idea into action, action into result, and it's interacting with an invisible law that allows it to be so. And that brings about what we intend and are co-creating. The first thing we actually do if our prayers seem ineffective is to go back into our own awareness and adjust our perception and to lift our belief to the higher point of view, to shift our expectations. You know, sometimes spiritual work, I don't like the word work too much, but spiritual practice is kind of about doing nothing, but returning to that magical child self. You know, there is a self, and it's true. Some people call it the soul or the true self, but that self has never been touched by any worldly experience. That self has never been damaged, has never been diminished. Its light never goes out. And that is the self we affirm when we're attempting to create a newness in our life. We do not try to do it from the fearful self. We don't try to do it from the angry self or the hurt self or the wounded. You know people who always lead with their wound? Yep, every conversation you get in with them is coming from that wounded place. Spiritual practice is attempting to come from the non-wounded place, the whole self, the light within us, the quickened self, the self that's never been damaged or touched by human experience. That's the self you find when you meditate regularly. And that's why I'm so big on meditation. It changed my life completely in a very short time. The regularity of it is what does it, and we'll talk about that in a class. So we may realize in our taking an inventory of our inner life, maybe we've been waiting for God to intervene on our behalf, trying to get God to do something. Maybe we've been hoping God would drop a fortune into our laps. I'm actually not giving up on that one, but you never know. It happens, right? Seriously, have we been waiting for some power outside of us to attract the perfect partner for us? The perfect job, the perfect situation, change our health? Are we waiting for something else to do it? I think most of us do that without realizing we're doing it. We say, help me. And that's okay if it gets our own attention and moves us into an action, a spiritual mind treatment to treat our mind, give our mind a treatment of spiritual truth so that we erase the fear, the negativity, the worry, and enter back into the quickening of that self that co-creates with this universal power. So, we may have adopted some out-of-date superstitions or beliefs that have no place in this modern life that we are living in. And that's what I'm all about as a minister. I'm about what Ernest Holmes was about. And this is what he said: I don't want to destroy religion. I want to liberate it from superstition and dogma and get back to the core of it, the essence of it, which is the joy of being and knowing that Spirit is present right where we are all the time. That could change the world. People are operating, making choices, some of them choices that affect whole countries based on religious dogma and superstition that has no place in the world today. We're way beyond that. We must include science in our spirituality because they're the same thing. They're looking for the same thing. Science and spirituality are going to the same place. They're looking for that field of consciousness out of which all life arises. And they'll find it, as spiritual teachers have always found it. So, whatever our situation is, if it's not serving our greater good, take some action and see the fact of you from the highest point of view. Start there. Rethink who you are. I want you to say something out loud if you feel like it. I am the revealed form, of the creative intelligence, which makes everything out of itself, by becoming the thing it makes. It does it through me, by means of me, without hesitation. I am its co-creator. And I am in the business of making its way easy. Now that's a really powerful thing to think about. We get in God's way, if you want to put it in religious language. The universe, being the consciousness of Spirit, is always trying to come through. It doesn't stop and start. It doesn't say, oh, I think I'll go over there because I like her better than him. Or she's being a good girl, let's give her some of that. Or he needs to be punished. It doesn't do that. It's just constantly giving its love, its joy, its peace, its power, its vitality, its supply, and all those things turn themselves into human experience based on who they come through. And who they come through is a cluster of beliefs and ideas, and it's called me, right? So we're in the way. Spirit never withholds. The universe always says yes. It's a wish-fulfilling thing. That's how creation happens. And so you and I have one thing to do with our spiritual practice: stay open, stay quickened. What do they say these days? Stay woke. Stay awake. be wholehearted in our spiritual practice. I love the word wholehearted. Where our spirit is focused and we're partnering with it. So, we use the words co-creator with spirit a lot, but do we really get that we are referring to how our life works? We are co-creating with a universal power that has never been limited by any experience we've given it to do thus far. So let's say this out loud. There is a power that makes all things new.
There is a power that makes all things new.
It is invested in my life.
It is invested in my life.
It knows me as itself.
It knows me as itself.
And all that it is.
And all that it is.
So, do we feel the presence of the power in the idea itself that we have, whatever idea we have? That's called, and Ann said it this morning, enthusiasm. The power of spirit in our idea is enthusiasm. We are enthused. That means to be filled with spirit, the energy, and that's the energy of creation. So this week, I invite you to go home and get out a journal or just a piece of paper and write a little narrative about what makes your heart sing. Everybody has something that when they talk about it, they light up. What is yours? Revisit that. That's something that is wanting to come through you. It's wanting to happen. It's pushing at your consciousness. It's saying, let me out. See, we're never trying to get God in. We're trying to let it out. Give it something to do, right? So let's begin a new series of causes and effects in our life, and it all begins with an idea and some energy. Let's get that ball rolling. All right.